Job interviews can be very scary to go through. There's a lot riding on that conversation that you're going to have with someone. They have something that you want, a job, and your goal is to try to talk them into giving it to you by sharing your experiences and by sharing your qualifications. That's a lot of pressure, and on this week's episode, I'm going to give you some tips on staying calm and relieving stress that you may be experiencing as you prepare for the job interview. It is the week of May 4th through the 8th, 2015, and this is the QC Step Podcast. Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of the QC Step Podcast. I'm Corey Finneran. Before we get into this week's topic, if you are not working right now and you would like to work over the summer, you should be filling out job applications right now. If you wait any longer, it will just become more and more difficult to find a position. So don't wait. And if you need help with knowing where to apply, if you need help filling out job applications, or if you want help preparing for a job interview, our program is here to help you. You can ask your teacher to contact Gary or Carrie, and then they will meet with you. This week's topic comes from a student at Rock Ridge High School. And this student asks, how do you relieve stress during an interview? So we're going to talk about the things that you can do to help take some of the pressure off of the interview. So here are 4 tips for taking the stress out of the job interview. Tip number 1, get a good night's sleep. Getting a good night's sleep is important before doing anything significant or anything that you want to do well on. I'm sure that you hear at school that it's a good idea to get a good night's sleep before a big test. Well, a job interview is a big test. It's a huge test. And you will find that your ability to focus will be greatly improved if you've had enough sleep the night before. Tip number 2, eat something before your interview. It's probably not a good idea to eat a big full meal because that could upset your stomach or it could make you drowsy. But you don't want to go into an interview with an empty stomach. A growling stomach could make for a really awkward interview. So my suggestion would be to eat a granola bar or a protein bar and drink some water. Getting sleep and eating something before the interview, those may not seem like things that would help relieve the stress of an interview, but these things are crucial. Tip number 3, get to the interview early, but not too early. My suggestion is get to the business about 15 or 20 minutes early and then sit in the car and begin to mentally prepare yourself for going into the business. Remind yourself of the main points that you would like to bring up in the interview. Make sure that you can remember the person's name that called you for the interview. Take your time, breathe deep, and calm yourself down. I'd suggest going into the business about 5 or 10 minutes before the interview is scheduled. If you don't give yourself any leeway and you get there at the very last minute or late, it will be a very stressful situation. Imagine if you get stuck in traffic and you need to be there in 3 minutes and then you arrive a few minutes late. You're going to be very stressed out and you won't have the time to mentally prepare yourself for the interview, and chances are you won't perform as well. So make sure that you give yourself time to calm down and get to the interview a little bit early. Tip number 4, be prepared. In fact, be over-prepared. Being prepared means that you are ready for any interviewing situation. You've mentally prepared for an interview in a loud environment. You've mentally prepared for interviewing with someone that isn't maybe real friendly. Being prepared means you've done several practice interviews and that you've prepared to answer almost anything that this interviewer might ask you. Being prepared is probably the biggest factor in avoiding stress during an interview. If you've prepared for about anything that they can throw at you, then you don't have to worry. You don't have to sit there and be waiting to be blindsided. Having confidence in knowing that you are prepared to answer any question will take away tons of stress. You will probably never eliminate all of the stress of interviewing, but if you follow these 4 tips, get a good night's sleep, eat something before you go into the interview, get to your interview early and be prepared, then you will give yourself a much better chance of being successful and getting the job that you want. We only have a few more weeks of the podcast for this school year. If you have any employment questions that you would like answered, then submit them to me and we will work those into the next few episodes. You can submit them by clicking on this icon at qcstep.com and filling out this form. Like I said at the beginning of this episode, if you want to work this summer, now is when you should be applying for jobs. Ask your STEP or your co-op teacher to contact Gary or Carrie if you would like to discuss your employment options with them. Thank you for watching or listening this week, and we will be back next week with another episode of the QC Step Podcast.